Next on TCM, The Last Wave, then The Four Musketeers, and later, Joy in the Morning. We're happy to remember Richard Chamberlain tonight.
Good evening and welcome to Turner Classic Movies. I'm Dave Karger. Tonight we're paying tribute to a remarkably versatile actor who passed away earlier this year, Richard Chamberlain. Born in Beverly Hills on March 31st, 1934, Chamberlain died on March 29th, just 2 days shy of his 91st birthday. His career spanned 6 decades, beginning in 1959 with appearances on various TV series and movies, before really gaining steam in the early 60s with a wildly successful run as the star of the hit TV series Dr. Kildare. Then, at the height of his popularity as a TV heartthrob, Chamberlain decided to prove himself as a serious actor by moving to England and training in the theater. In 1970, he stunned British critics with his starring performance in a stage production of Hamlet, becoming the first American actor to attempt the role on the British stage since John Barrymore, 4 decades earlier. He then took his dramatic talent to the big screen with several memorable performances in films from the 1970s, including the film that's up first tonight. From Australia in 1977, it's The Last Wave. Set in Sydney, the story begins when a white lawyer, played by Richard Chamberlain, is assigned to a legal case involving a group of Aboriginal Australians who have been accused of murder. In order to understand his clients, he immerses himself in Aboriginal history and starts to feel connected to them on a much more powerful spiritual level. The film was directed and co-written by Peter Weir, who had just earned international acclaim for his 1975 mystery, Picnic at Hanging Rock. The Last Wave was a much more ambitious production with many sequences featuring surreal special effects. Weir was also able to get a well-known American star to lead the cast in Richard Chamberlain. From 1977, also with Aboriginal actor David Gulpilil, here is The Last Wave. By the time Richard Chamberlain starred in The Last Wave in 1977, he was already an established star in movies, on television, and on stage. He made his film debut in 1960 and 1 year later became a teen idol, playing the title role in the long-running NBC series Dr. Kildare. After the series ended, he moved to England, where he performed Shakespeare on stage and starred in several notable films from British directors like Ken Russell and Richard Lester. He made The Last Wave in Australia for director Peter Weir, who had just begun to break through as one of the top directors of the Australian New Wave with his 1975 drama Picnic at Hanging Rock. Within just a few years, Weir would become internationally renowned with films like Gallipoli and The Year of Living Dangerously. Richard Chamberlain was also on the cusp of even greater fame at this point in his career. 1 year later, he co-starred in the 12-part series Centennial, which marked the beginning of his extraordinarily successful run as one of the biggest stars in TV miniseries in the 1980s, including Shogun and The Thornbirds. Up next, Chamberlain joins an all-star cast in a swashbuckling film from 1975 based on a novel by Alexandre Dumas.
Next on TCM, The Four Musketeers, then Joy in the Morning, and later, Twilight of Honor. We pay our respects to Richard Chamberlain tonight.
Welcome back to TCM. I'm Dave Karger. Tonight we're honoring Richard Chamberlain, who passed away at the age of 90 earlier this year on March 29th. Chamberlain became a star in the early 1960s as a TV heartthrob on the hit medical drama series Dr. Kildare. But when the series ended in 1966, he chose to break away from his matinee idol image by training as a serious actor. He spent several years living in England, performing on stage, and making movies with acclaimed British filmmakers. In 1968, he starred alongside Julie Christie and George C. Scott in the British drama Petulia, directed by Richard Lester. And he teamed up with Lester again in the early 70s to make what turned out to be 2 films based on a classic novel by Alexandre Dumas, The Three Musketeers, released in 1974, and the film that's up next. From 1975, it's The Four Musketeers. Michael York stars as the hapless D'Artagnan, and as this movie begins where the previous one left off, he's finally earned his place as one of the King's Musketeers. Together with the other 3, played by Richard Chamberlain, Oliver Reed, and Frank Finlay, He gets mixed up in a world of intrigue and action involving King Louis XIII and the conniving Cardinal Richelieu. The all-star cast also includes Charlton Heston, Jean-Pierre Cassel, Faye Dunaway, Christopher Lee, and Raquel Welch, all reprising the roles they played in The Three Musketeers. Richard Lester actually filmed this sequel while he was making The Three Musketeers. There was so much footage from that film that the producers decided to split it into two separate movies, a controversial decision that did not sit well with any of the actors. I'll talk more about that when we come back. From 1975, here is The Four Musketeers. Richard Chamberlain played Aramis in both The Three Musketeers, released in 1974, and The Four Musketeers, which premiered 1 year later. But like all of the actors in the cast, he was under the impression that he was only making one film. When The Three Musketeers was finished, the actors were stunned to learn that extra footage had been shot and edited together to create a sequel, without the cast's knowledge or consent. Naturally, they were furious that the producer, Ilya Salkind, used them in two films for the price of one, and they banded together to sue to be compensated for their work. The lawsuit ultimately resulted in a new clause that the Screen Actors Guild adopted called the Salkind Clause. It's a legal guarantee that a contract for a single film can't extend into a sequel without a performer's consent. Incidentally, even though both films were constructed out of the same production, only The Four Musketeers earned an Oscar nomination for Best Costume Design. Up next, Richard Chamberlain returns in a film he made a decade earlier, a 1965 romantic drama co-starring Yvette Mimieux.
Next on TCM, Joy in the Morning, then Twilight of Honor, and later, Petulia. TCM remembers Richard Chamberlain tonight.
Hello, I'm Dave Karger. Thanks for joining me tonight on TCM as we continue our tribute to Richard Chamberlain. After an early start studying painting and art history and serving in the U.S. Army, Chamberlain found his way to professional acting in the late 1950s. One of his first jobs was a guest appearance on an episode of Alfred Hitchcock Presents. Raymond Massey played his father, and before long, the two actors were playing colleagues on another hit TV series, Dr. Kildare, a medical drama based on the popular film series from MGM that had starred Lou Ayres in the 1930s and 40s. Chamberlain won a Golden Globe for playing the title role on Dr. Kildare, and up next is a film MGM produced to capitalize on his popularity as a television heartthrob. From 1965, co-starring Yvette Mimieux, it's Joy in the Morning. Mimieux plays a poor young woman who runs away from home to marry the man she loves, a wealthy college boy played by Richard Chamberlain. But their life as newlyweds is complicated from the start by a whole host of factors, including family disapproval, financial struggles, and intimacy issues. The film was based on a novel by Betty Smith, the author of the 1943 bestseller A Tree Grows in Brooklyn. And it was adapted for the screen by a team of writers, including Sally Benson, whose memoirs formed the basis for the 1944 MGM musical Meet Me in St. Louis. MGM planned Joy in the Morning as a vehicle for Richard Chamberlain and Yvette Mimieux, teaming them up for the second time after they had worked together in a memorable episode of Dr. Kildare, which earned Mimieux a Golden Globe nomination. From 1965, directed by Alex Siegel, also with Arthur Kennedy and Oscar Homolka, here is Joy in the Morning. In many ways, Joy in the Morning followed the pattern of other 1960s big-screen soap operas, but it was daring for its time in certain ways, including the sympathetic portrayal of a gay character played by Donald Davis. For Richard Chamberlain, it would be another 4 decades before he publicly came out as gay in his 2003 memoir, Shattered Love. Chamberlain not only starred in Joy in the Morning, but also, as you heard, he recorded the movie's theme song. In addition to his long and successful careers on television, in movies, and in the theater, Chamberlain was also an accomplished singer. He had a minor recording career in the early 1960s and went on to star in several stage musicals, including revivals of My Fair Lady and The Sound of Music. He also briefly starred in a Broadway musical adaptation of Breakfast at Tiffany's, opposite Mary Tyler Moore, but that was a notorious flop, closing in previews before it even officially opened. Up next is another film Richard Chamberlain made at the start of his career, a courtroom drama from 1963, co-starring Nick Adams and Claude Rains.
Next on TCM, Twilight of Honor, then Petulia. And later, Deadline at dawn. TCM is right on time tonight.